I never thought I'd be the guy who literally gave up a piece of himself for marriage. Those were the kinds of stories I'd scroll through on Reddit late at night, smirking, thinking, well, that's not me. I chose right. That kind of tragedy belongs to someone else. My name's Thomas Miller. I live in Portland, Oregon. 36 years old, work as an engineer designing security systems for warehouses and retail chains. My wife is Emily. When we met, she was 21, an art student, always with paint smudges on her hands and that laugh, that bell-like laugh that made people stop and look. I was the rational, dry type. She was color and chaos. Somehow, it worked. We'd been married 11 years. No kids, just a house in the suburbs and a dog named Rambo. I thought we were happy. At least, that's what I told myself every night falling asleep next to her. Then the doctors told us her kidneys were failing. Chronic renal failure. Either a transplant or a lifetime chained to dialysis machines. She'd go from the wild, bright-eyed woman I knew to a shell tied to tubes. Her relatives weren't matches. The donor list was a dead end. And that's when I stepped up. Got tested. Perfect match. When I told Emily, she cried. Real tears. Red cheeks, shaking shoulders. She kept saying, "You're insane, Tom. You don't have to. You shouldn't." And I just smiled and ran my hand through her hair. Of course I do. Isn't that what marriage is? Looking back, that was mistake number one. Believing sacrifice guaranteed loyalty. The surgery was at OHSU. 2 weeks of hell. Tubes, pain, this weird hollow feeling in my body like something was missing, which of course it was. I'd given it away. I'd given it to her. But she was doing well. The doctors said her body accepted my kidney like it belonged there all along. I felt proud. I felt like a damn hero. She sat by my bed, held my hand, sometimes fell asleep in the chair. When the pain meds dulled my brain, I looked at her and thought, this is it. This is why. Nothing can break us now. I'm literally part of her. How can she ever leave me? For a while after we got home, it felt like a honeymoon. I was weak, moving slow, napping in the middle of the day. She brought me tea, cooked, smiled more than she had in years. Even Rambo seemed to sense the shift, glued himself to me like a furry shadow. I believed in the fairy tale, believed my sacrifice had fused us together. But here's the ugly truth. When you give up part of yourself, you expect something back. Not money, not applause, just intimacy, closeness, loyalty. I waited for it, and I kept waiting. At first, she called me her hero, posted Instagram pictures, tagged them, #MyLoveIsMyLife. Friends gushed over me. That's a real man, they said. But hashtags fade. Likes don't last. Reality crawls back in. Soon she was leaving the house more. Gotta see the girls. Need to get back to my art. I can't just sit inside all day. And yeah, I got it. She was healthy now, brimming with energy. Me, I shuffled around the house like a ghost. And one night she came home late. Too late. And I smelled cologne on her. Not hers, not mine. A heavy, smoky scent. I tried to joke. What, you hit a bar where guys drown themselves in aftershave? She laughed too hard. Too sharp. Come on, Tom. Don't be jealous. You're just paranoid. I didn't push it, but the joke stuck in my throat like a bone. Back then, I still didn't know my greatest gift, my kidney, my love, my faith, was nothing but background noise to the biggest betrayal of my life. Funny, isn't it? I gave her a piece of myself, and she was already giving herself to someone else.
Turns out recovery's worse than the surgery. The knives and anesthesia, at least, those end. But afterward? You're alive, yeah, but you walk around like half a man, like a shadow. The house felt too big when I got back from the hospital. Empty. Cold. I'd shuffle down the hallway, one hand on the wall, thinking, so this is how old men live every day. Rambo trailed me like a bodyguard. Sometimes I caught myself talking to him. Pathetic, right? A guy with one kidney left, pouring his thoughts out to a dog because his wife was out. Again. At first, Emily was there. She made soup, set alarms for my pills, helped me with bandages, said she was proud of me. I wanted to believe it was real, that she'd finally seen what I meant to her. But the care faded. First she sat by me, held my hand. Then she just left food on the table and went to another room. Then she left the house altogether. I need to get out, Tom. I'm not sick like you. I can't just sit here. And I tried to understand. Hell, I wanted to understand. She'd been sick for months. Now she was free, alive. Who was I to chain her down? I told myself, this is why you did it, so she could live, so she could breathe. Still, something was off. One August night, hot as hell, I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea, waiting for her. She was supposed to be back by 9. Midnight rolled around. Headlights hit the driveway. I heard her laugh. That laugh. The laugh I used to think belonged to me, but it was outside, shared with someone else. A tall guy in a baseball cap walked her to the door. She thanked him too long, too warmly. I didn't make a scene. When she came in, I just said, "Late night." She shrugged. "Just hanging with the girls. A friend gave me a ride. Don't start, Tom. You know I love you." And that was the first time "I love you" felt like a password, not a promise. And here's the kicker. I felt ashamed. Ashamed for being jealous, sitting there in my robe with pain meds rattling in my pocket. Ashamed for being weak. Men are supposed to be strong. I was just an invalid in my own house. Maybe that's why I pretended not to notice the cracks. Irony. I gave her health and lost my own pride. The clinic shrink warned me about depression. Find joy in small things. Stay close to loved ones. Good advice if your only loved one isn't halfway out the door already. So I started a journal. Wrote down times, pills, when Emily left, when she came back. Told myself it was for structure. Really, it was proof. A log of absence. Some nights had flipped back through memories, like old Polaroids. Meeting her in that bar on Hawthorne, the paint smudge on my shirt. Road trips down the Oregon coast, greasy burgers and laughing until we cried. All of it felt like it belonged to somebody else's life, not mine. But I still hoped. God, I clung to hope. I thought, when I'm stronger, we'll take a trip. New York, Seattle, Vegas, anywhere. Just us. We'll spark again. It'll come back. One night, I even asked, "Hey, how about a vacation? When I'm healed up, just the two of us. What do you think?" She looked at me like I'd suggested a funeral. Smirked. "Tom, get back to work first. Then we'll talk about trips." That smirk froze me colder than any hospital IV. Yeah, I still hoped. But hope was turning into habit. Habit into self-deception. The worst part? I defended her to myself. Every late night, every excuse, I patched up with, "She's young, she needs her space, don't smother her." I even told myself, "You should be glad she's smiling, even if not at you." At some point, I realized I wasn't waiting for my wife. I was waiting for validation. For her to say, "You did the right thing, Tom. You saved me. It matters." That's all I wanted. But it never came. Instead, I felt the gap between us stretching wider every day. I gave her my body, my time, my strength. She gave me nothing back, but distance. I didn't know then that someone else was already standing in that gap, filling it. Back then, I still clung to the lie that things would get better. But lies have a way of rotting, and when the truth finally hit, it damn near killed me.
I always thought I could read her face like an open book. 20 years together do something to people. You know not only expressions and habits, but even breaths,
pauses, intonations. Sometimes I felt like I could hear her thoughts before she even spoke them. And yet that very confidence became my trap. The first changes were so tiny I could have laughed if someone had pointed them out. She started staying late at work. An hour, 2 hours. She used to text, "Working late, busy day," or call, complaining about dumb coworkers. Now it was just dry. "I'll be late." And that was it. Evenings, she stopped sitting with me on the couch watching dumb shows. She'd sit with her phone, scrolling, and when I walked past, the screen always tilted slightly away. Not dramatic, just subtle. But I noticed. And this smell, I didn't catch it at first. Just a different perfume, not hers. Cologne? Maybe a guy at work walked by too close. Dumb. I knew she was sensitive to scents. She spent months with friends analyzing every perfume. Did she not realize I could notice too? But I shoved the thoughts away. "You're paranoid," I told myself in the mirror. "She's tired. She went through all that with you. We're both knocked off balance, and you're suspecting her? Shame on you." I was ashamed, and I believed, and I excused. One Friday, we had plans to meet our friends, Mark and Lisa, old pals. Usually these nights were loud, filled with laughter, wine, and ridiculous work stories. But that night, everything felt off. Emily was late, again. She arrived, hair perfectly done, makeup a touch heavier than usual, dress I'd only seen on a model. She smiled at our friends, nodded to me like I was a shadow in the room. We sat, ordered food. I tried to keep the conversation going, but her attention drifted. She laughed at Mark's jokes a little too long, sometimes glanced away when I spoke, and kept checking her phone. At one point, I noticed her eyes light up at a message. She quickly hid the phone when I looked. I saw it, though. That gleam, that laughter, not meant for me. I pretended nothing happened, but on the way home, I thought, this isn't small. She doesn't see me as her husband anymore. I did everything, and now I'm just invisible. The following week, we argued over something trivial. I left an open can of coffee on the table. "Tom, you left it out again. Seriously, is it that hard to be neat? Are you kidding me? I saved your life, and now you're telling me how to set down a coffee can?" Her eyes widened. "Tom, don't dramatize. It's coffee. And everything else, your absence, your secret calls, your nighttime laughter, that's coffee to you too?" She went quiet. Her eyes flickered with panic. I realized she didn't expect me to notice, but I said nothing. I just stared. And for the first time, I thought, I don't know you anymore. This isn't the Emily I loved. The fight wasn't loud, no screaming. We retreated to our rooms, each with our own silence. But that silence played the loudest tune, the crack I could no longer ignore. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night and see her phone's light. She'd be in another room, covering the screen with her hand, laughing softly. When she noticed me getting water, she'd quickly lock it, pretending to read recipes or news. It wouldn't have mattered if it weren't for the laugh. I hadn't heard it like that for years. Alive, light, genuine, but not for me. I caught myself being afraid to ask directly, not because I didn't want the truth, but because the truth could be worse than anything I feared. I started noticing details that used to slip by. New underwear, not for me. Makeup in the mornings, even on work days. Gym trips that lasted too long. I tried to talk. "You've been distant lately. Everything okay?" She smiled. "Of course, just tired." And that was it. Her smile was tight, but she knew I wouldn't dig. I never had. Sometimes it felt like she was testing how far she could go, like a game. Late nights, coldness, soft laughter with her phone. And I sat there remembering the hospital day when I lay with a tube in my arm, thinking only of doing this for her. and the memory made me feel sick, empty. But I stayed quiet. I still hoped it could be fixed, that she would come back, that my sacrifice wasn't wasted. But the crack was already visible, and through it, something dark and final peeked. I started noticing the patterns first, the little things, like threads of smoke curling through my life that I couldn't pin down. Emily had changed her phone password. That in itself was small, but to me, it was seismic. I'd never had to unlock her phone before. She used to let me swipe, joke about my snooping tendencies, but now, every glance toward the screen was like trespassing in forbidden territory, and I wanted to trespass. God, I wanted to. Then came the evenings. She would tell me she had errands, grocery run, pick up something for the studio. I need some air. But the timing was always off. Too late. Too long. Always when I was weak on the couch, pretending to read a magazine I didn't care about just to feel normal. One Thursday night, I followed her, in the shadows, a coward in my own car. I kept the distance, just enough to see, not enough to be caught. She parked at a dimly lit bar, a dive with neon flickering and music that made the walls pulse. She met someone outside, tall, broad, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. They laughed. Not the polite laugh of friends, not the laugh of casual conversation, the laugh that made your stomach tighten. I didn't drive home. I just sat there, hands gripping the wheel, knowing my life had shifted. Back at home, I tried normal. Dinner, wine. How was your night? I asked casually. Fine, she said, and smiled. That smile, the one she used to reserve for me, now scattered across a wider, colder world. I wanted to scream. Instead, I poured myself another glass of wine and stared at my plate. I realized I hadn't eaten properly in days, afraid food would fill the emptiness her presence once did. Then came the things I couldn't ignore. Her scent lingered in ways I didn't recognize. Her laughter, sharp, private, distant for me. Her wardrobe, a little brighter, a little riskier, a little someone else's. I started noticing her smiles at messages on her phone, quick text replies she hid when I came near, the small smirks, the way she angled her chair toward the light of the screen but away from me. And I caught myself staring at her too long, trying to memorize the lines of her face, the curl of her hair, the angle of her mouth, when she didn't know I was watching. Every detail felt like a lifeline to someone I could no longer reach. It was a Saturday afternoon. We were supposed to clean the garage. A simple task. I said, "Did you move the boxes like I asked?" She said, "I was busy." Busy doing what? She shrugged. Her eyes flickered, and I saw it. Irritation, fear, guilt, all in one. Just busy. You're overreacting. Busy hiding your phone in the bedroom? Busy laughing at someone else while I sit here and recover from surgery? Her jaw tightened. She looked away. I knew then that my suspicions were justified, though I couldn't prove them. The rage boiled inside me. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand the truth, but I didn't. I had learned too well that my calm kept her in place, but my confrontation would only push her further. I left the garage and walked into the yard. Feeling the sun on my face and the emptiness in my chest, Rambo followed, tail down. I sat on the steps, hands on my knees, and tried to breathe. Tried to tell myself that maybe, just maybe, I was overthinking. Then came the weekend. Alone. Emily went out with friends, again. Hours passed. The house grew quieter. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful but oppressive, like it's weighing down on you, holding every heartbeat in suspense. I found her notes. Little scraps of paper, hidden in her studio bag. Names, numbers, times, dates, small fragments of a life I wasn't part of, though I had given her everything. My health, my trust, my heart. I didn't touch the phone. Didn't call her out. I didn't even speak. I just sat, reading these scraps over and over, the same way someone might stare at a wound, afraid to blink. And I realized the sacrifice I made, my kidney, my time, my loyalty, it didn't anchor her. It didn't stop her. It didn't matter. I felt like I had been in a dream, saving someone from drowning, only to wake up and find the water had been drained elsewhere, leaving me gasping alone. I started writing again. A journal. Not for recovery, but for survival. Each entry cataloged her absences, her behaviors, the smells, the sounds, the laughter. I tried to be objective, like a scientist observing a specimen, but each line, each note, bled rage and heartbreak. I went for long walks at night, tried to convince myself the city lights, the quiet streets, the occasional passerby would fill the void. But nothing worked. Every shadow, every echo, reminded me that she was out there, somewhere, sharing herself with someone else. And yet, I couldn't stop hoping. I couldn't, because hope was all I had left.
After all the sleepless nights, after hours spent journaling my thoughts, I realized I couldn't endure this anymore. The fear of the truth had become stronger than the fear of losing her. On Saturday, I stayed home. Emily said she was going to the store. Boring here alone, I thought, watching her get dressed. She looked normal, but in her movements, there was that subtle habit of hiding something I couldn't ignore. I waited until she left and cautiously approached her studio desk. Her phone was there. My heart was pounding as I picked it up. I never thought I'd do something like this before, but now it was the only way to find out the truth. The password. I guessed at first. Wrong. Then a random thought hit me, and it worked. The screen lit up, and I saw the string of messages. They weren't just flirty. There was passion, laughter, intimate hints, photos I couldn't believe. I could barely breathe. Everything around me seemed to shrink, as if the world had clenched me in a fist. I read and reread, trying to understand how it was possible. My Emily, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, was giving herself to someone else right before my eyes. Later that night, I went out again. Not to follow her in secret, but to see it for myself. She met him at the same bar I had seen them at a week ago. This time they weren't hiding. He hugged her, she laughed back. Everything was so open, I could hardly believe it. I drove home, barely holding myself together. I wanted to scream, to tear this world apart, but I was left alone with the void. The next morning I said, "Emily, we need to talk." She looked at me, surprised. "About what?" "I know. Everything. You, him, photos, messages." Pause. Silence. She didn't speak, and I could see her face change, from surprise to fear. "Tom, it's not what you think," she finally said. "Not what I think?" My voice shook. "I saw everything. I know everything." Her eyes dimmed. She looked down. For the first time I felt that we were at the edge, beyond which there was no turning back.
After seeing the proof, everything changed. I couldn't just sit and wait anymore. Every glance at Emily, every gesture, became a test, a game I wasn't sure I could win. She tried to act normal, but I noticed every detail. Tiny pauses, extra smiles, quick touches to her phone. I responded the same way, coldly, watchfully. No shouting, no demands, just being there, like a shadow. The morning was quiet, almost suffocating. Emily brewed coffee, trying to act normal. "Morning," I said, my voice even. "Morning," she replied softly. I watched her, how she carefully placed the mugs, blew on the coffee to cool it. Every move was an indicator of her state, as if she were trying to communicate without words. "Emily, we need to talk about some house rules," I said. "What rules?" she asked, surprised. "The ones about us. Honesty, transparency, no secrets." She shook her head, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I knew she understood that I knew. The next week, I started acting carefully. Every step she took, every delay, I recorded in my mind. I asked simple questions. "Where are you going? Who are you with? Why did you get home so late?" On the surface, just ordinary questions, but the tone I used made her tense. She tried to smile, joke, distract with work or friends, but I stayed alert. I realized the game was now two-sided. She was hiding, I was observing. And the more I noticed, the more desperately she tried to maintain the illusion of normal life. I started using small tactics, leaving accidental notes she would react to, slipping questions about her friends and acquaintances, checking messages she forgot to close. I played a game where every detail was a signal. Her smiles got smaller, laughter disappeared. Evenings at home were thick with tension, but I never showed weakness. I became a shadow, quiet, constant, right there with her. One evening, we sat side by side on the couch. I said quietly, "Emily, I see everything." She froze. Her eyes darkened for a moment. "Tom," she started, but I raised a hand. "Don't speak. Just listen." I told her what I had seen, how every action of hers hurt me. I spoke calmly, but each word hit like a hammer. She listened, staring at the floor, and I saw, for the first time in a long while, that she felt fear. We sat like that for what felt like hours. The silence was complete, but in it, a new kind of music played, the music of fear and control. I realized the game had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. Every day felt like a test. I watched, analyzed, waited for the moment when Emily could no longer hide the truth. Patience was my only weapon, but even that had its limits. Emily grew more irritable. Every question, even simple ones, triggered tension. I asked calmly, quietly, like I was just clarifying. "Where are you going? Who are you with? Why did you get home so late?" Her answers became sharp, sometimes short, sometimes attempts to steer the conversation elsewhere. But in her voice, I could hear fear. I started leaving accidental hints, open notes, questions about her friends, checking messages she forgot to close. She reacted to every little thing. It was like a chess game. I made a move, she responded. One evening, I sat beside her on the couch and quietly said, "Tom, we need to talk about everything." She looked at me, startled. "Tom, don't start. I know everything you're trying to hide." I saw the anxiety fill her eyes. I spoke calmly, but each word landed like a hammer. She listened silently. In the quiet, I felt a strange sense of power, but I also knew it was dangerous. We sat in tension for what felt like hours. Time passed unnoticed, but every moment was like a breath before a storm. I realized, soon, it would be time to act. I began thinking through every step. How to talk to her to get a confession. What to do if she denied everything. How to maintain control without losing myself. I understood the game had moved beyond observation. This was now a battle for truth, trust, and my life. I needed to be ready for anything.
Every morning started the same, but now the routine itself had become a weapon. I watched, analyzed, and planned. Every gesture, every glance from Emily was a signal I responded to. I decided to act gradually. Small checks first, questions, hints, observing her reactions. Every answer, every movement was recorded in my mind like a chess game. Where are you going today? Who did you meet? Why are you home later than usual? Her answers grew less confident. She tried to deflect, smile, joke, but I could see it. Internally, she was tense. One evening, I staged a casual meeting in the living room as she came home. "Emily," I said quietly, "we need to talk." "About what?" she asked, surprised. "About you and him. I see everything." Her eyes widened. She froze, trying to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Tom?" she began, but I raised a hand. "No words, just listen." I spoke calmly, watching her every move. She was silent, swallowing back tears, trying to find an excuse. I could see, for the first time in a long while, that she felt fear and vulnerability. The next day, I continued the game. I tracked her movements, who she interacted with. Sometimes I left accidental messages she would react to. Every little motion under my watch, every signal, my small victory. I knew she felt the pressure, but I stayed calm. I became the shadow, always there, observing, waiting. And each day, the tension stretched tighter, like a drawn wire ready to snap. Every evening, sitting together, silence said more than words ever could. I saw her clench her hands, a faint tremor in her smile. This was my control, quiet, invisible, but all-consuming. I knew the moment would come soon when she could no longer hide the truth, and then the game would end. The tension had reached its limit. I couldn't wait any longer. Every glance from Emily, every movement was the final signal confirming what I already knew. I waited until she came home after another night out with friends. The house was quiet, almost dead. I positioned myself in the living room, every detail planned in advance. "Emily, sit down. We need to talk," I said, calm but firm. She sat across from me, trying to hide her anxiety. I could see it in her eyes. Fear, plain and simple. "I know everything," I continued. "You tried to hide it, but it's over now. No more lies, no more secrets." She stayed silent. I watched the fear mix with desperation on her face. She tried to find words, but none came. "Tom," she began, but I cut her off. "No excuses. Just tell the truth." She sighed, tears forming in her eyes. I didn't want you to find out like this." "Who?" I asked quietly. "Mark, and a few others." Her voice shook. I don't even know why." I listened, feeling everything inside me burn, but I remained outwardly calm. I could see it. The game was over. The truth was finally out. I didn't yell. I didn't act violently. I spoke calmly, firmly. "Everything has changed, Emily. We can't go back to how it was." Every word hit like a hammer. I saw her feel, for the first time, the consequences of her actions. I held control of the situation, but I knew the road ahead would be long, emotionally and psychologically, for both of us. After the talk, we sat in silence. The house was filled with emptiness, but it was honest. No more lies, no more secrecy. Everything was out in the open, and now we had to live with the truth. I knew this was only the beginning. The games were over, but real life, with all its consequences, was just beginning. The silence in the house was thick, like glass. Days had passed since Emily's confession. No words, just quiet, filled with a new understanding.
We moved through the house like two ghosts of our former life. I watched her, she watched me. Each day was a test. But now, everything was honest. No more lies, no more secrets. "Tom," she finally said softly. "Not now," I interrupted. "We both need time to process." I realized rebuilding trust isn't instant. It takes time, strength, and honesty. Every day was a step toward a new order, where truth was the foundation. I left the past behind, the bitterness, the anger, the fear. I allowed myself to acknowledge that now the control and power were mine. I saw Emily, and in her eyes I recognized my resolve reflected back. We no longer played the game of secrecy. We were beginning a new chapter, one without illusions. That evening I sat alone, reflecting on the path we'd walked. Everything that had happened had changed us. I understood. The truth isn't always a relief, but it frees you. And now I was ready for the future, whatever it might hold.